the sea goddess. Hello everyone, I'm Christine Schiavone and our show is Spiritual Exploration. Tonight we're going to talk about 2012 and beyond. But before we do, before I introduce my very, very special guest, I would just like to dedicate this show to a very close friend of mine who recently passed away. And I miss her dearly, I really do. She was a good friend, and she was almost like a mother to me. And as I said, I'm going to miss her very dearly. If you want to please put up her picture. And her name is Muriel Carlos, and she and I were very close, and I am going to, as I said 3 times already now, I'm going to miss her. I do miss her. And so the show is dedicated to her memory tonight. Thank you. In the meantime, though, my guest this evening to talk about 2012 and beyond is Louix Dor Dempriey and Dempriey. Dempriey, okay. These French words, right? But you're not even French, right?
No.
Anyway, but we're here to discuss this. He's a very special guest to me. You might remember him from some of the other shows that I've done in the past. And when was the last time you were here?
2009?
2009, so that's a good 2 years, right?
Yeah.
Wow, I haven't seen you in 2 years. Anyway, though, so we've done other shows together, and it's a wonderful thing to have him present tonight. And we are going to talk about 2012. But before we go into that, you were telling me before that you're going to have some things going on with your organization. You're going to have a retreat in Sedona. On New Year's Eve?
Yeah, 6 days, 5 nights in Sedona.
Wow, that sounds wonderful.
Yeah, we'll be at Enchantment Resort, which is really beautiful.
Yeah.
It's going to be very, very powerful and very awesome. And I couldn't think of a better place to bring in, to usher in 2012 than in Sedona.
That's true.
It's one of the most powerful vortices in the world. So.
Yeah. Well, I know that one of the people that helps me on my show, who's not here tonight because she's on her way to Sedona as we speak, is Pat Brady, and she goes there just about every year. She's there for about 3 or 4 weeks. And she keeps telling me it's a beautiful place, and you should go, and the atmosphere is so wonderful, and the energy is so spiritual. And so someday, hopefully, I'll make it out there.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. You can join us if you like.
I'll try. I'll see what happens.
Alrighty.
You know, I'll see what happens. But, well, if anybody would like to join you, you have a website that they can go to?
Yeah, the retreat is well explained on the website. It's www.louix.org.
Just louix.org.
Yeah, keep it simple. So.
That's right.
Yeah, and if you go in there, there'll be buttons and things you can find your way into the retreat. It's well explained there.
Oh, I'm sure. It's probably an interesting. I'll have to check it out myself now.
Right.
It's probably an interesting website to just go and explore.
Yeah, there are a lot of teachings on there. We've got about 20 to 25 videos now too, and.
Including some that we've done.
Yeah, ours are up there. And the 2 shows, excerpts from the 2 shows we did, and a host of others. And we've got about 20 audio discourses and a lot of written teachings and photos. And it's a good library of metaphysical teachings, so it's cool.
So that's Louix, louix.org.
X like Xerox.
Yes, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Now, as far as like 2012 is concerned, it's approaching quickly.
Yeah.
And we've had our eye on 2012 for a good decade or more, I imagine, right?
Yeah, the buzz has been growing, so. It
has been. And you know, years ago, I did a show with a gentleman from Manhattan who trans-channeled the angel Gabriel. Mm-hmm. So when I had the opportunity, when he was in angel mode, I would ask questions. And he said that by 2012, between then, which was around 2000, 2001, and 2012, between 1/3 and 1/2 the world's population was going to die off because of disease and disaster, he said. And quite a bit of that has happened. We've seen it. We've seen the tsunami. There's been tornadoes. There's been other kinds of weather conditions.
Floods, huge floods, landslides.
All kinds of things that have taken people's lives.
Yeah.
And plus there's a lot of diseases that take people's lives every day. There's a lot of heart disease. There's a lot of cancer and all kinds of things. People die every day. And so I don't know if we've lost that many people, and 2012 is, as I said, fast approaching. This is now late July, and we have about another 5-6 months until 2012 actually is upon us. Now, what can we expect between now and 2012, and then when we get here? What do you think?
In these next 6 months, you mean specifically?
Yeah.
Well, there's definitely an acceleration that's been happening and is going to continue to happen at an exponentially increasing rate. So that I do not see changing, and even after 2012 arrives on January 1st, that rate of acceleration and transmutation and cleansing is going to continue for quite some time. So it doesn't end on January 1.
No,
So-
no. Actually, they're talking about December 21st, 2012.
Yeah, and there's still very clearly a mass exodus in progress. That's
Of people leaving this life.
yeah.
And going on, because it's my understanding, according to the angel Gabriel, that these people have volunteered to leave, to exit this earthly life, and go on because they had work to do on the other side, preparing the people who are going to remain behind for this event.
That's certainly the case for some. I mean, I knew of one. I had a dear friend last year who was very young, just only a couple of years older than I am, and he was in perfect health, and he left just spontaneously, and no one knew anything, and he was gone in 30 seconds, and he came to me, and it was very clearly a case that he went to help from the other side. There's so many numbers transiting now that there are definitely people on the other souls on the other side who aren't embodying because they need to help all these arrivals, and
In other words, they're not reincarnating.
Yeah, and there are ones
they're needed.
and there are ones who you said who are also leaving so they can help from the other side. But that doesn't account for the majority of ones who are in the mass exodus. I mean, then there are of course the ones who are, had it not been 2012, they'd have been going anyway. But what I see happening is that a lot of the mass exodus is due to people's resistance, because what's happening now is as love is reclaiming this planet and reclaiming dominion of this planet, the people who continue to refuse to surrender to the divine, to the master plan, to surrendering certain ways of being, whether it's selfishness or greed or avarice or all these different non-loving habits and non-loving ways of being, there's a call now, a clarion call from the divine that it's, the planet is moving into a much higher love vibration, and they can't sustain anymore. So, that old saying, whatever you resist persists and intensifies, and your soul by design removes everything that stands between you and God, you and the beloved. And so, since you're immortal anyway, and there is no death at the level of the absolute, if someone's resistance is so high and their embodiment is what's in the way, your soul will just remove that. Because the whole objective is that we all merge into God and walk again as pure love as we were originally designed and built. And so a big part of the mass exodus, most of it, is conscious and unconscious levels of resistance that come so high that they actually have to be moved out of the density of their physical embodiment so they can get into an altered plane, another plane, where there won't be that fight, that ego, willful fight and defiance against the Creator. And then when that happens, then it's easier to inculcate and engender surrender within someone, and then we go from there.
Do you think that that's the reason that a lot of people are I've heard a lot of people just dying in their sleep, or, sitting in the chair watching TV and they just leave?
Yeah, and the catastrophes and the natural disasters as well. It's the same thing. And the increase in terrorism and disease, all of it, absolutely.
Do you think that, speaking of terrorism, do you think that we'll see an end to that after 2012?
Oh, again, it's not 2012. It's just it's a point. It's a day in time.
Right.
It's it's not going to be like a Wizard of Oz moment where the door opens and all of a sudden everyone's walking around hugging and kissing each other. So but it is a definite turning point in the critical mass. It was important enough, for the Mayans to end an entire calendar there. So it is pivotal, but it's definitely not going to be the Wizard of Oz moment where we go from the world of black and white, the door opens and there's just hearts and flowers and everyone's kissing in the street. It'd be nice. I'd like to hold that vision.
Right, it would be
and
nice,
I'd love
right?
to hold that vision. Maybe something big enough will happen to do that. it's clear that coming back to New York, I lived here in the early 80s, and, as tragic and heartbreaking as it was to watch what happened here in the 911, I can see the change in this city is so unbelievable. It's unbelievable. It's unrecognizable from when I was here in the 80s.
In what way?
Oh, it's the feeling of community, of camaraderie, of bondedness, it feels like a family. It doesn't feel like this impersonal giant city.
No.
Everywhere I walk, there's a feeling of community that it's so palpable. And it's quiet, and there's a peacefulness. And I mean, it was really wild in the 80s. Of course, the 80s were wild anyway. That's what they were known for. But it's just, it's sad that it takes tragedy to do that, but that's the way the human condition operates.
That's true.
When that tsunami hit all through the Asian countries, I mean, I don't know if you remember this, but in the news, almost all the wars on the planet, if not all of them, they all put down their weapons for a certain amount of time to go help all the people ravaged by the tsunami. So let's not shoot each other for the next week or two. And then they went and helped all these people stranded, and then went and picked up their guns and started shooting each other again. But crisis brings out the best in people.
Oh, it's true. I mean, I remember.
Everybody remembers the truth of who we are, that we're all one family of people here to love and help and serve each other.
Yeah. Post 9/11 here in New York, I remember where a lot of people were kind of looking at each other with an idea of helping and being there to. I mean, I know that on the road, a lot of people would let you go instead of trying to cut you off. They were being very nice and things like that. Now it's not as much, but there's still, you're right.
Yeah, it plateaued a little, but it's still completely different.
Yes, it is. You're right.
Yeah, and the people I knew then, whom I know now, still talk about it like it was yesterday. People still are healing those wounds and still in the throes of it like it was last week.
Yeah, well, I remember it very vividly, that's for sure.
Yeah, and we always will.
That's right, we have to.
So when you were talking about, how much change would happen in December, I mean, I certainly, of all people, like most people, I don't want any tragedy to happen to anyone. No. But I also, I live to see and teach and help people open their hearts to become as loving as they can be. And it's God has a mission statement, whatever it takes to bring my children home is what'll happen. So if the resistance is strong enough, then that opposition will be met by things that will definitely bring humanity to its knees into a state of surrender, where we can finally accept that we are divine beings here to live a divine, loving life.
Well, that's right.
And that's going to happen whether anyone likes it or not.
That's right. We are not humans having a spiritual experience. We're spirits having a human experience.
Exactly.
And a lot of people don't realize that.
Yeah, that's true.
But so in other words, what you're saying then is everything is happening in divine order.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It just doesn't look it through our human perception sometimes.
Sometimes it's true, especially when we lose loved ones and things like that. And
yeah.
It's God's will, but it's hard on us to accept it.
Well, human nature, lives in this bipolar duality of everything's measured and perceived by humans as good and bad, right and wrong, and that's not really true, the absolute. Everything just is, and it's exactly what it needs to be to help us all realize our divinity and restore that divine blueprint. That's why everything happens. There's no other reason.
So people who are have left this earth, left the physical body, who have volunteered, because as you were saying, there's not a lot of people reincarnating because they're needed over there to accept all the people and help them acclimate themselves to another kind of life. So what I'm saying is, so then these people are over there and they're doing all of this. What is their experience now that they've left? Have you any?
What is the experience
of being in spirit?
Well, it varies from person to person, but in the moment of crossing, every soul, every embodiment, every being has what I describe as a window of omniscience, where when you first leave your embodiment, you have what's tantamount to a council. With the lords of karma, with your creator, of course your I am presence, your own divine self, and your master teachers, ones in spirit, your guardian angels and guides on the spirit realm, and also the souls in consciousness. If you had masters or guides in this life, they would presence themselves too. So you have this team that you had before you were born that helped co-create your life and planet, and they gather right when you when you depart. And you have this period of reflection when you're not in you don't have, unlike what movies depict, you're not in this human personality reflecting. You're fully divine reflecting on your life. So that you don't have, like the movies show people having guilt and shame and all this. You don't have any of that. You're just like God. You are there as God, looking at your life from a place of total passivity, total objectivity, total unconditional love and acceptance, and you just simply reflect on the isness of what happened. And you see, okay, here were the lessons I set up for my journey through life. These ones I passed with flying colors. These ones I didn't. These ones I could have done better. Here's where I was foolish. Here was I was fearful. Here I was courageous. And you reflect and assess as this counsel, and you see all the lessons you gain. Because, people say we come in with nothing, we leave with nothing, but it's not exactly true. There is one asset you do depart with, and that's the evolution of your consciousness. So what you gained, how much love you became in that lifetime, is the asset you leave with, the only one you leave with. And so you reflect on that and see how many of my lessons did I really dive into and master, and how much have I expanded. And then there's a period where you will not necessarily right then and there, but at some point you'll recreate the next series of life lessons, whether they're embodied or in other dimensions, it doesn't matter. But for some people, especially now, because there's, as we were saying before, there are so many people leaving, and there are so many tragic or severe circumstances that there's so much unresolved karma and so much distress and emotional upheaval in people's crossings that there's a lot that has to be reconciled, and it doesn't just get washed away. Because when you leave your embodiment, the only thing you drop is a piece of flesh. You take yourself wherever you go, in this world and after this world.
And you are the same person after.
Yeah. So whatever you haven't worked through still has to be resolved. So a lot of people, and as I said, especially now, what happens when they leave, they have that period of reflection, which could, it happens very quickly. In our Earth time, it could be, from hours to a few days. But then a lot of people go into healing retreats. They go to these etheric retreats. They're like rehab for spirits,
Oh, really?
And or halfway houses, you might say. But they go into these healing retreats where they are really, really pampered and caressed, and they have teachers there in the spirit realm, different masters and angels and saints who come and they administer and they care for these people, and they help them resolve and reconcile some of the disturbances that are still unresolved
from their life.
Yeah, and then they go through that. And my experience, I've been doing this about 20 years, and all the ones with whom I've worked on both sides, they usually, the ones who go into etheric retreats, on average, it can vary from person to person, but most of them have been between, say, 8-9 months and 12 to 14. So on the far side, 8 to 14 months, but usually 10 to 12 months. And then they've reconciled enough, resolved enough, and got clear enough, and then they're ready to create that new program and move from there. But a lot of people are leaving so fast with so much distress and fear and resistance that they're really kind of stuck, and they have to be worked through all that. So that's what these healing retreats are for, and a lot of people, more so than ever, go to those for a period of time.
So in other words, if you don't do it here, you're going to do it there?
No, if you don't do it here, you have to do it here. That's just like a way station. This is another fallacy that a lot of people buy into. A lot of people, they get so fed up with living here. They get so frustrated either because the world is cruel or mean or polluted, or they don't find that it's just harmonious or nice enough, or what they thought they were promised before they were born never came to pass, or they can never find love or find God or whatever it is. A lot of people get to a point where they just say, I just want to go home. I just want to leave here and go to a nicer place, a lighter place.
I think we've all been there, right?
Oh, yeah. Who hasn't had a taste of that? I know I did.
Me too.
Yeah, my strongest period was in my teens, in my adolescence, where I just couldn't stand what I was in, but I also loved life and loved the planet. So I was torn because I didn't like what I had, but I didn't want to die, but I didn't want to live, and I was really torn. And obviously I'm here, I moved through it. But this, it's really, I'm so glad you brought it up, because I really want to disband and disperse and dispel that fallacy that I'm just going to go somewhere. There's really nowhere to go, because when you leave your body, you don't go anywhere, because we're immortal beings who are omnipresent. We are everything and everywhere at all times, and the only thing you don't so much go somewhere, you just lose a piece. That's your piece of flesh. But even your consciousness is still here anyway. I mean, how many of our departed ones do we still feel and talk to and see, smell, and they move objects and talk to us? So we're always everywhere, so that we don't actually go to a place. And the thing about going somewhere else where it's easier, well, a healing retreat in the etheric is easier, of course. But your point was about if you don't work it out here, you work it out there. The truth is we have to work through our journey into the divine can only be fulfilled in a human embodiment. So in other words, the outcome of God realization, where we fully merge into our divinity and restored and live as gods and goddesses on earth, that can only happen during an embodiment. It can't happen in between or after. So yes, there is healing that happens. There is more karma gets transmuted and more growth happens, but it has the process has to complete in an earthly embodiment. And some masters have said that it takes 1,000,000 years for a soul to liberate itself on earth, which is really profound. If you think of the average human life as 80, 90 years right now, 1,000,000 years of the process of entering the illusion of what we call separation and journeying, quote, back to God or into our own divinity.
Takes that long to get it straight.
That shows how resistant humans are. Can be. But also, you know, God always offers the path of grace, so while at the same time, you know, we can kick and scream and drag and suffer, we also can have it in the twinkling of an eye, just like that, in that surrender. You know, we can always just say yes.
Well,
Remember that Nancy Reagan slogan on the windshield, just say no to drugs? Well, you know, God's slogan is just say yes. Just, you know, wave the white flag, or my favorite saying is surrender Dorothy. Remember from The Wizard of Oz, the witch run in the sky. I always say that to people, just surrender, just give it up. You know, you're not in charge. You never were.
It's true, though. That's one of the things that was brought out in a book called The Celestine Prophecy. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
I know of it.
The guy was, he was in Peru, and he was being tracked down by a bunch of soldiers or something, and they were really, really hot on his trail. And he got to a point where he figured, this is it, the end.
It's over.
It's over. These people are going to find me. They're going to kill me. So I may as well just surrender and forget about it. Just say, okay, that's it. And just as he surrendered, these soldiers went right by him. He was hiding behind a bush. and they just kept going. They went right by him, and they just kept going. And the next thing you know, they're out of sight. And he's like, oh, wow, you know. So he survived.
Yeah.
So I know what you mean.
Well, in the act of surrender, what flows into our lives is grace, and that divine grace just overlit him, and so he was invisible.
Right.
So, but this is how the divine works in tandem with us. When we fight and resist, the universe amplifies that. Not God, the universe, because you know we reap what we sow.
Yes.
So it comes back at us. The universe is just a giant boomerang that amplifies and returns whatever we put into it. But in an act of surrender, surrender is an act of grace, of human grace. And what you get in return is amplified divine grace that just comes in and takes hold of you and works miracles in your life.
Yeah, and all you have to do is say, okay, I give up.
I give up. And yet people say it intellectually, but then their lives don't show that. But it really is that easy.
Yeah.
You know, it's just, most of what we do in life is for the purpose of discovering we never had to do it in the first place, which is the ultimate paradox, but it's true. It's true.
Yeah.
I remember probably the second realization I had in the moment of my enlightenment was, oh my God, this was so easy. Why did I have to suffer for 30-something years and put myself and everyone around me through so much, thinking I knew better than God and thinking I had all the answers, and all God was waiting for was just to surrender.
Here you say, that's it.
Say, here, let me take you, let me give you everything.
Right. It's like when we turn to God like children turn to their parents.
Yeah.
You know?
In that selflessness, in that defenselessness, in that just complete faith and trust and surrender, like the way a child looks at a parent, just helpless and just, of myself I can do nothing, take me.
Right, that's it.
And then the divine just rushes in and takes us and does everything for us.
Yeah, that's true, that's true.
But that fear, the inherent fear in people just gets in the way and prevents them from trusting like that.
Yeah, I imagine, a lot of people are not trusting at all, and usually when you can't trust, you can't be trusted either, right?
Somehow it works out that way, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
right. So then these people that have left for the purpose of going on to prepare for 2012 and beyond, the world is changing, and we've been in the process of all this change for quite some time now, and it's supposedly culminating sometime late in 2012. Now, beyond that, what do you think we can expect in the world? Do you think that we're going to see wars end? Do you think that we're going to see everybody living in harmony eventually?
Ultimately, yeah. I won't put a date on it because then it's really up to the choices that people make. But that is going to happen. I mean, that's what this Aquarian age is about. You know, we're ushering in an age of a golden era of peace. So you'll see a lot of the evils in the world, you know, will be a thing of the past, and they'll actually be, you know, because of our forgiveness and our humble state that the race will finally be in, it'll be almost laughable. We'll look at ourselves like we were Cro-Magnon, you know, up until, you know, that certain time. But some of us will see that in our lifetimes for sure, but certainly huge parts of it, huge parts. I'd love to see the end of all wars before I leave. But see, this is part of what the acceleration is about, because of that resistance, nature and the divine are sending vehicles and instruments and catalysts to ingratiate us into a state of surrender, you know, because we could have done it willingly. So that you're going to see happening more and more and more, this overlighting. You're seeing more and more spiritual awakenings happening in people just spontaneously, like popcorn kernels in hot oil. Just people are just having these awakenings. Their whole lives are changing. And you're seeing these upheavals taking people and institutions, organizations, governments, companies to their knees, if not to dust. And what's happening is wherever, an individual or a group or an institution or even a government's foundation is not built on the bedrock of unconditional love, there's first an invitation to change, because the divine always offers the path of grace, even though humans almost always choose the path of suffering. It's human willful nature. But the divine always offers these quiet invitations. You know, you need to change, you need to change. And when people keep saying no, the invitation gets louder and stronger and stronger. And eventually, something cataclysmic happens to create that surrender. So all the things that you see crumbling are things that do not have their foundations in love. And that's why you see specific industries coming down, because if they're based on greed or corruption or unhealthy competition, they can't sustain, because the planet's moving into such a high vibration of love that they cannot sustain, because outer creation can only, all creation happens and sustains within a harmonic convergence of energy. So like, you know, like if this cup is vibrating at a certain frequency, it can only withstand an increase of a certain amount and a decrease of a certain amount. So there's a window, a band, a continuous band of energy in which that can sustain. If it goes higher, it'll explode. If it goes lower, it'll crack. And human life and institutions, anything of consciousness is the same way. So as the light keeps increasing, like let's just say that's the band of light that is the Earth's vibration of the collective consciousness. And if that's going up and someone's choosing to stay here in hatred, in greed, and the vibration of the planet's going, they either have to change or leave their embodiments so they can grow and come back in when there's more healing that has happened and they're able to live in a more surrendered, more loving space. So it's quite a simple principle that's happening.
So then you think that maybe new people that are coming in, like babies being born, are coming in with a different attitude?
Oh yeah, and a whole different blueprint. They're coming in with different brain structures.
Yeah, they talk about indigo children and things like that.
Yeah, they're coming in